Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Indie Alaska is a groundbreaking series that dives into the lives of people living in the last frontier. Each episode introduces you to colorful characters from around the state. Funding for Indie Alaska is provided in part by Alyeska Pipeline Service Company. Catch the latest episodes at alaskapublic.org.
It's never too early to set expectations and goals for your child's education. The UA College Savings Plan provides opportunities that can help you reach your educational savings goals. Save in Alaska. Study anywhere. There is more information available by calling 1-888, the number 4, and then Alaska. This message sponsored by the UA College Savings Plan.
The National Weather Service.
And good Friday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It's the 30th of October. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information. You can do that easily by listening to NOAA Weather Radio, Marine VHF, or heading to the internet at weather.gov/Alaska or calling us on the Weather Info line at 800-472-0391. You can find information during the day on Facebook, Twitter, and on YouTube. And about 3:45 to 4 o'clock, you'll get your daily afternoon map briefing there. It's a great way to get a really short, quick run through of the weather charts that you'll see later on Alaska Weather, and we're about to show you there tonight. During the in-between times of Alaska Weather, when weather is happening, we love to see your weather pictures. Anything around Alaska is always fun to look at. And of course, if you tag those weather pictures with a hashtag AKwx, like you see right here, whether it's on Facebook or Instagram or on Twitter, it's a really easy way for those of us at the National Weather Service offices in Fairbanks and Juneau and Anchorage to see that you're talking about Alaska weather and telling us that, hey, this is something we want you to look at. It helps us do our job better when we know what's going on with your visual reminders there from your community all the way around Alaska. So thank you in advance for sharing those if you haven't already today. Here's a look at what we expect to happen around the middle Yukon Valley and across northwestern Alaska. If you haven't heard by now, snow is coming, and it looks like winter's really going to set up shop across the interior of the Seward Peninsula, the north coast there, including Shishmaref, and all the way around Kotzebue Sound to the north and to the southwestern facing slopes of the Brooks Range all the way up to Point Hope. We're expecting snow to fall, and on the lower side of that, it could be around 4 inches of snow starting late tonight and into tomorrow. And on the high side of that, it could be upwards of about 8 inches of snow. The red areas are winter storm warnings, so you know that these areas are probably a little more likely to get some of those higher snowfall totals. In the yellow shade is a winter weather advisory, and that doesn't mean nothing's going to happen. It means that there will be some snow there, but it looks like the amounts may be just a little bit lower in the region around Galena, Kaltag, and Huslia. So if you're in any of these areas tonight, get ready for some snow to fall. It'll probably fall as we get into the late night hours and into tomorrow, and then pick up as you go through Saturday with a wet and cold weather meeting up. Here's where it's coming from. As you look at the satellite picture, you can see a pretty hefty area of low pressure just west of the Kamchatka Peninsula, and there's plenty of moisture feeding into the Bering Strait as well. And we're talking about this area right here. So the storm is still off to your west, and it's advancing from the southwest to northeast. And because of that, it looks like there's enough cold air gathered into the region, enough moisture pumping in, and enough lift, not only with the weather system itself, but running into some of the higher and elevated terrain. That should set up a pretty good system for the snow to fall in earnest for a good about 12 to 18 hours at least. So again, we're watching for the potential for about 4 to 8 inches of snow in general across the northwestern parts of Alaska. But snow has been falling across south central Alaska, and you can see some of the brighter white clouds here. Places like Kenai and Soldotna and areas up and down Cook Inlet, including Anchorage and the Matanuska and mostly the Susitna valleys, really have been seeing the snowfall there. It looks like that will continue as we go into the evening hours, and some places might pick up another inch or so as that colder air and the wet air remains. This is starting to peel out and gradually move back into the central and eastern Gulf as we head toward the weekend. That should provide more clouds and probably some wetter weather for southeastern Alaska. But at the same time, that northwesterly flow is also resuspending ash from the Katmai eruption, of course, way back in 1912 now, and it is just a wonder to me every time we get into this weather pattern how ash 100 years ago could still be lofted into the air by strong and gusty northwesterly winds. But sure enough, it happens every single time when we get into this very perfect weather pattern here with that northwesterly wind. So because of that, the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit and the Volcanic Ash Advisory Center here in Anchorage is again advising aviators to watch out for that, and marine interests probably need to keep an eye on that as well. Here's a look at the surface weather map now. Low pressure sitting across the central Gulf at 985 millibars, responsible for the cold air and the lift, providing snowfall to south central Alaska at this point. There's also snow falling into the central interior that will gradually wind down through the weekend. We've got another weak wave of low pressure just offshore of Yakutat. That's at 988 millibars. And if you've been talking or watching some of the weather reports across the Pacific Northwest, they're expecting a lot of rainfall as well. That's what the system is here across the southern Gulf. That is moving eastward, not expected to move north. Out across the western Bering, here is the weather maker that will eventually bring snow to the Seward Peninsula and Kotzebue Sound. So you can see it's not quite there yet. High pressure across the central chain at 1,030 millibars is going to drop southward and make way for weather systems to move across the top with cold air, and then here comes the snow. As we get into tonight, watch for snow to begin across Kotzebue Sound and the western end of the Seward Peninsula. High pressure across the north slope will still allow a few snow showers off to the east, but generally speaking, it'll be a southerly flow from places like Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse and westward, so that's bringing that moisture northward and running it into the colder air. Snow showers and light snow will continue across the eastern interior as well as parts of south central Alaska. Rainfall for the Gulf Coast and low pressure sitting at 983 millibars will continue trekking eastward. That will continue moving toward the Pacific Northwest through the weekend, and we'll still have some remaining clouds of rain and snow showers, mainly around Prince William Sound as we get through Saturday afternoon. Some residual snow showers across the eastern Alaska Range and the areas around Eagle and southward toward Northway, Tok, and Chicken. Out across Kotzebue Sound, the weather front sitting right across the region will continue the periods of moderate to heavy snow, and again, winter storm warnings and weather advisories are posted in your region. As warmer air returns, though, on the backside of this, snow will start to mix back in with rain showers across the western coast. You'll see more clouds than anything across southwestern Alaska, and it looks like a fairly dry period for places like Kodiak and the Cook Inlet region. And again, with that north and westerly wind, though, ash may continue to be an issue. Low pressure across the western Bering is strengthening. That drops to 969 millibars. As a front swings through the central Aleutians, the winds will come up once again, and as we get into Sunday, you can see how quickly that weather pattern is moving eastward. Once again, snow will fly across south and western Alaska, the Seward Peninsula, and as well as the west end of the Brooks Range and the south-facing slopes of the Brooks, as well as parts of the Chukchi Seacoast. As that next weather front makes it ashore, you'll see slightly warmer weather, and there could be some rain showers there, as well as some wetter weather for the Pribilof, St. Matthew, and many areas along the Aleutians, of course. That's a look at your weekend weather. Drier conditions will gradually sneak back into southeast, and by the end of the weekend, showers will probably be predominantly located across the southern end of the Panhandle, with drier weather again for the central and eastern interior. Awful lot going on as we wrap up October. For southeast today, temperatures struggled into the upper 40s to about 50 degrees. All in all, not a horribly cold day for you. Again, a drier day for many. Around Prince William Sound, mid-40s for most. While Valdez and Cordova both at 45. Anchorage struggled to get out of the 30s today. 32 in Kenai and 38 in Homer. Heading up the parks, it was 28 in Talkeetna, 29 in Gulkana, and looking northward toward Healy and Fort Greely, about 20 degrees for both, 24 in Fairbanks and 23 in Eagle, with 21 in Fort Yukon. Arctic Village was in the teens today. Anaktuvuk Pass, only 1 and Barrow showed 4 with AKwx at 5. AKwx was 9 with teens for areas around Wainwright and southward into Kotzebue Sound, including Kivalina and Shishmaref at 27 degrees. 26 for Nome. It was 15 in Unalakleet, even though the sensor might be reporting minus 15. Watch out for that. It's not quite that cold today. 21 in McGrath, 29 in Bethel, and areas in the Bristol Bay saw temperatures at or just below freezing with Lake Iliamna around 27. Kodiak, 36 degrees. Lower 40s for the Pribilofs, upper 30s to about 40 around parts of the southern Alaska Peninsula. Sand Point was 41. Cold Bay and Falls Pass in the upper 30s. Adak and Atka in the low to mid 40s today, and Shemya was reporting 44. Overnight low temperatures will stay in the single digits for most of the interior, with the coldest air around AKwx Pass and northward toward Barrow at or above 3 degrees. Many locations out across the west, the air will warm up as snow arrives. 23 degrees in Nome, lower 20s for Bristol Bay, and 33 in Kodiak with south central in the 20s. High temps tomorrow back in the mid 30s there, with southeast still in the mid 40s tomorrow. Upper teens for areas around the middle Tanana Valley, Fairbanks, North Pole, and Chena, and westward toward Tanana. Look for 9 degrees around AKwx Pass, 12 in Barrow, 8 in Kaktovik, with temps in the upper 20s around Bethel, 41 in Nunivak Island, warmer still in St. Paul and St. George, and lower 40s for the Alaska Peninsula as well as the central chain. Kodiak looking at temperatures in the lower 40s tomorrow. On to flying weather, and with snow falling across northwestern Alaska, it's no surprise IFR conditions will rule the day there tomorrow, so plan accordingly. Most of the interior, the north slope, south central, southwest, and southeast should experience VFR conditions there. IFR conditions passing through along that frontal boundary moving east, so expect that to travel further eastward on Sunday. Flight conditions then through the passes look pretty good in most locations there. Anaktuvik and Adigan Pass will both be VFR conditions there. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass should be okay by tomorrow. Rainy Pass and Windy Pass probably okay. The Windy Pass may start out at MVFR conditions during the day. Isabel Pass will also see improvements during your Saturday. And Metasta Pass, VFR conditions by the afternoon for you. Tanita Pass looks to be VFR. And as you look at Portage Pass, things not so scary there for Halloween Day. Chilkoot and White Pass probably start out a little bit more on the spooky side in the morning, with MVFR conditions developing by the afternoon. Freezing levels, cold air is certainly winning out over most of continental Alaska as we get into the morning hours. You can see across the Bering, the next weather maker is bringing in some warm and wet air aloft through most of the Bering. Freezing levels for the central chain up around 8,000 feet. For southeast Alaska, those levels around 2,000 to 4,000 feet. Everywhere else is below freezing. Icing potential shows that most of the northwest coast will be the focus there for icing threats, so not only poor visibility, but that icing threat for you will be a little more on the elevated side. Occasional moderate there, generally above 4,000 feet. Once you get north of the Brooks Range, it's below 6,000 feet. You can see exiting areas of interest there for the Yukon, and ahead of the next wave above 8,000 feet around the central Aleutians for your Saturday. The jet stream is has a pretty big amplitude for the west coast. You can see the ridge taking shape here, and then a pretty high amplitude trough across the central and eastern Gulf. Wind speeds are the greatest on the south side. This is what's feeding all the moisture into the Pacific Northwest. And out across the northern Pacific, here is the next big surge of wind that's guiding in the weather maker across the western Bering, strengthening that and again giving it power to produce some snow across northwestern Alaska. At 9,000 feet, you can see a similar pattern here. Our ridge across the west feeding in that warm and wet air from the Pacific out of the Bering and meeting up with colder air in northwestern Alaska. Wind speeds have been picking up the last couple days across the interior, about 25 to 35 knots or so from the west and northwest. And as you get into the central and eastern Gulf, low pressure here just west of Haida Gwaii is guiding in more of a northerly flow coming off the Yukon and British Columbia. Light easterly winds coming off the hills there at 15 knots across southeastern Alaska. Wind speeds are fairly strong at 3,000 feet here across the western and southern Bering, 50 to 60 knots. High pressures just south of Unalaska and Dutch Harbor. We've got light northerly winds across some parts of the lower and middle Yukon, but they quickly pick up as they start feeding into low pressure across Cook Inlet and Kodiak Island, and once again resuspending the ash at the surface. Low pressure is also dragging in wind across the northern Gulf, a little bit slower there around the Copper River Basin, and then picks up once again across the central and eastern Gulf to as high as 40 knots. Winds still fairly light across southeastern Alaska. So as far as turbulence goes, we're really going to focus on the wind working through northwestern Alaska below 4,000 feet, watching for some occasional moderate there. Also across some areas just west of the Alaska Range and north of the Aleutian Range, below 4,000 to about 6,000 feet in the west and Kodiak Island there, again with those stronger northwesterly winds. and below 4,000 feet across the central chain as that frontal boundary is working through. Southeast right now looks to be A-OK. That's a look at your aviation forecast. In just a few minutes, Perry Daney will be back with the rest of your marine weather. Stay tuned.
Good evening, I'm Harry Keeling, and on behalf of Alaska Public Media and the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation, welcome to Hangar Flying. Tonight we welcome back John Bender, who's the Deputy Commissioner for Aviation, Department of Transportation, State of Alaska. John's from Alaska originally, had a distinguished career in the Air Force, flying a number of different aircraft, including the F-15, and want to come back to that towards the end of this program, talk a little bit about flying the Eagle. But last time, if you tuned in, John was talking about some of the decisions that are facing the state when it comes to infrastructure and the way forward. So welcome back, John.
Thank you. Great to be here.
The one question that we didn't hit upon, we talked about different categories of airports, 249 total. How about maintenance? How is that handled? Snow plowing and
Sure.
things like that.
Okay, well, we had talked about our certificated airports, which tend to be the larger ones that jets are flying into, Alaska, Raven, those types of folks. And most of those are hub airports, Bethel, Barrow, Deadhorse, those larger type. And we have actually DOT personnel located at each of those all the time who maintain those facilities. However, each one of those hubs serves as the hub for a whole wide range of village airports surrounding each of those communities. And so out of that 249 you just listed there, we've got about 170 that we consider our village airports. 150 of those are maintained by a local resident within that community. So the state contracts with a local resident there to provide that service. The state provides the equipment, the building to put the equipment in, the training in a lot of cases for those people as well. And it's their responsibility then to keep that runway open, keep it plowed, do runway checks each day, those sorts of things, replace burned out light bulbs, etc.
Wow, what a service. And you had mentioned last time 82% of the communities need the air service. Wow, keeping the airfields open like that is incredible. So thank you, and thank your people that make that happen.
It's our pleasure.
Let's shift gears a little bit. We've got a couple of minutes here. Let's talk about flying. You've got a lot of experience. F-15 at Elmendorf?
Yep.
So what was that like?
Boy, it's a lot of fun. It's the best airplane in the world. I'm a little biased, of course, but had a thrill flying that. Got to fly another tour in Idaho for several years as well. And then pretty much the rest of my career was made up with several different flying assignments, teaching new guys, teaching basic pilot training and fighter lead-in and some of those other courses, which frankly, from a job satisfaction overall standpoint, I actually enjoyed those more just from the thrill of seeing people learn, seeing it, people get it there after hours of putting that effort into them.
Well, the Eagle has been a stalwart fighter for many, many years. A lot of countries around the world fly it, and still the U.S. Air Force. Let's bring it home to Alaska. We've got a pretty dismal safety record in Alaska. Unfortunately, despite everything we try and do, we've got a significant amount of fatal and serious injury accidents. What one thing would you say maybe could help reverse that trend?
You know, don't know if you can put your finger on one particular thing, but certainly we all know flying is very unforgiving there, and particularly in Alaska when we get the huge changes in weather overnight or really quickly, and fast train differences as well. Certainly the training, I think, is where I would hang my hat for the most part, and I think from my observations, it's the folks you see who try to take advantage of a nice sunny day and then have things go south on them when they aren't as proficient as they potentially could be, either in the aircraft or with the procedures they're trying to fly. The other aspect of that is sometimes our airports, thankfully, the accidents over the last few years haven't been related to the airports, but certainly that's my goal as Deputy Commissioners, to make sure the airports aren't contributing to those. And I guess that's what I would put out to your audience is, I mentioned those village airports, and it's not very often that we're able to get actual DOT people out there to inspect those and see the things that aren't going right. And so we're always soliciting feedback. Certainly if anybody sees anything out there that needs to be fixed or isn't working right, call me directly if you have to, because as soon as we find out, we make sure those are taken care
You
of.
want to publish your phone number?
I've got a work one I can make available to you.
No, I think that's a great idea. In fact, I bet you there's probably people out there that would happily provide you feedback.
We solicit it any time we can get it, absolutely.
John, thank you for being on the program. Thanks for what you and your people do for the state of Alaska and keeping the lifeline open. So I really enjoyed having you on the program.
That was a pleasure, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed tonight's program. I'd like to remind you that the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation is totally member supported. And as we move towards November, we'll start our campaign to sign you up for another year. It's $35 for an individual, $110 for corporate membership. We give you hangar flying twice a week. We award 3 scholarships. We do 2 safety seminars, but we couldn't do it without your help. So please go on our website, which you see on the screen, and renew your membership or start a new one if you don't have one. And until next time, fly safe.
Welcome back to your Alaska weather. I'm meteorologist Perry Daney. Now for your marine forecast. Starting off the forecast for the sea ice, the Beaufort Sea is still totally covered in sea ice, and along the Hannah Shoal, going along the northwest coastline, the sea ice is starting to thicken up some more. The sea ice experts have said that it appears to be at least a foot thick for the region along the northwest coastline. And we still have continued sea ice in the Kotzebue and the Norton Sound. Now for this weekend coming up, we're going to have southerly winds that'll be pushing up this sea ice here along Hannah Shoal farther north, so that should help. Now for your marine forecast for southeast for Saturday, in the inside waters, pretty much northerly flow, small crafts, and the wave heights will be anywhere from 3 to 6 feet. The outside waters, pretty much all easterly winds, small craft, and slightly weaker as you get farther up north near Yakutat. So they'll be 15 feet there. And your highest sea heights are going to be in the outside waters, of course, and wave heights are going to be 7 to 12 feet. For Sunday, predominantly all northerly flow, gale force winds coming out of Lynn Canal and diminishing as you get towards Dixon Entrance to 15. The outside waters, Yakutat northeasterly 25 knots, and then rest of the way down to Dixon Entrance southerly winds. Your wave heights again are going to range from 7 to 10 feet. Now the marine forecast for South Central, pretty much all northerly winds from Prince William Sound down east of the eastern Kenai, 15 to 20 knots. The Cook Inlet, you're going to have northerly winds 15 to 20 knots. And from the Barren Islands through Shelikof Strait and Kodiak, you're still at continued northwest flow. That cold air is still filtering in. And your wave heights are going to be range anywhere from 3 feet to 12 feet on the stronger winds down by Kodiak and the Barren Islands. For Sunday, Prince William Sound, northeasterly winds 10 knots, and then variable winds through the Cook Inlet, the northern portion. The southern end, you're going to have northerly winds 10 knots, and the winds will start shifting more westerly then along the Akpen and through the Barren Islands, Kodiak and Shelikof Strait. And your wave heights again will be range anywhere from 2 to 4 feet up through the Cook Inlet, and the outside waters there, Kodiak up through just east of Seward, anywhere from 5 to 8 feet. Now for Saturday for the Alaska Peninsula, predominantly all northwesterly winds. You're going to have some freezing spray in the Bristol Bay region for the morning time frame. And then on the Pacific side, you're going to have those strong gusterly northwest winds, 35 to 40 knots, and higher gusts coming out of the bays and passes. For Sunday, still continued northwesterly winds, but they are starting to tapering down some. You're still going to be slightly gale force there near on the Barren and Pacific side, near Cape Starashef and through King Cove region. For the Aleutians, for Saturday, pretty much all southwesterly flow from Dutch, and you start to get towards Adak and Atka southerly flow, as well stronger winds near Shemya
they're 40 knots out that region, and that's going to be with a system you can't see on here, but that's southwest of the Aleutian chain that's going to start driving strong winds into the Bering Sea. For Sunday, predominantly all southwesterly flow as that system gets closer into the Bering Sea, and you're going to have gale force winds on the western Aleutians. You get towards the central Aleutians, they start diminishing to small craft, and a little bit stronger on the Dutch side there, 35 knots. Wave height's going to range anywhere from 12 feet, and of course higher with the stronger winds there near Shemya. For Saturday, for the west coast, predominantly all southwesterly and southerly, small craft. There will be westerly through the Pribilofs, and your wave heights are going to range from 5 feet and a little stronger as you go farther north near St. Lawrence. For Sunday's west forecast, predominantly all southwesterly flow with that system that's south of the chain that's pushing the warm air up, and you're going to have wave heights 6 feet to 12 to 14 feet there in the northern Bering Sea. For the Arctic coast, you're going to have pretty much all southerly gale force, small craft winds coming out through the Bering Strait and pushing farther up north. They'll start diminishing more as you get farther north near Barrow, 15 knots. You're going to have, again, with our colder air, freezing spray and hot, heavier freezing spray in some areas. And along the east of Barrow, along the Arctic coastline, northwesterly winds 10 knots. For Sunday, Marine's forecast for the Arctic, you're going to have, again, continued southerly flow. They'll diminish some to small craft. And then as you get from Barrow eastward along the Arctic Ocean, Arctic coastline, you're going to have easterly to southeasterly winds 20 knots. And again, no sea heights because it's ice covered up here. Now for tonight's forecast, again, we're talking in the southwest there. You have that occluded low that's starting to push through the western Aleutians, and then bringing that strong winds and southwesterly flow. And then you have a occluded low coming off the eastern Siberia region, and that's bringing some heavier snow showers starting to filter into the northwest coastline, as well as the Seward Peninsula region. For the southeast panhandle, you're going to have the occluded low that's left over here, just sitting off near Hattagai, and that'll bring some rain and southeasterly winds through the inside and outside waters. Through south central, you have this stationary front draping through the northern coastline, so the Anchorage Bowl will have some mixed rain showers. Farther north, you'll have snow showers heading up into the interior, and through the Arctic range, you're going to have high pressure dominating. Thank you for Alaska weather.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.